Have you ever met someone and felt like they were hiding in plain sight? Like the story they told you, through words, smiles, carefully chosen memories, was only the surface of something much deeper, something quietly aching beneath? Most of us have. And too often, especially as men, we think the answer lies in asking better questions. So what happened with your ex? What was your childhood like? Why did things fall apart before? We ask because we want connection. We ask because we want to understand. But sometimes, asking is the very thing that drives the truth deeper into hiding. Because here's the reality. The moment someone feels like they're being watched too closely, they put on their best armor. They edit. They perform. Not because they want to lie, but because they've learned that truth doesn't always feel safe to share, especially not with someone new. And so, many of us build relationships based on curated stories, not raw realities. We fall for someone's highlight reel and miss the quiet patterns whispering the real history. The sigh after a joke, the change in tone when a name comes up, the way someone shuts down when the room gets too intimate. But what if we learned to see without interrogating? What if the real strength wasn't in asking the perfect question, but in learning how to listen without words? In this video, we're going to step into that space, the subtle space where truth lives beneath the surface. You'll learn how to read the emotional fingerprints that people leave behind without realizing it. Not to judge, not to control, but to truly see. And in doing so, you'll protect yourself, deepen your discernment, and stop wasting time on versions of connection that were never real to begin with. If anything in these first few minutes stirs something in you, maybe a memory, a regret, or even just a quiet sense of, yes, I felt this too, drop a comment, leave a like, and subscribe to Stoic now. You never know who else might read your words and feel seen. And now, let's begin, not with questions, but with the root. Let's start where every emotional pattern begins, the family. Because how she learned to love, fear, and trust didn't begin with you. It began at home. Number 1, what her family reveals. Before she ever knew how to love, she learned how to survive love. And that lesson almost always started at home. Ask yourself this. When she casually mentions her father, does something tighten in her voice, even as she smiles? When holidays come up, does she light up or go quiet? These aren't small details. They're the roots of her emotional operating system, quiet, invisible, and often running the show long before you ever arrived. See, you don't need her to unpack every chapter of her childhood. You don't need to ask, were your parents affectionate? Or did you feel safe growing up? Life doesn't always offer clear answers, but it always leaves residue. And that residue shows up in how she trusts, how she reacts, how she bonds, or struggles to. If her father was emotionally distant, she may crave validation, yet fear true closeness. If love from her family came with conditions, achieve this, behave like that, she may unconsciously try to earn your affection, even when it's already hers. And if warmth and chaos lived side by side in her childhood home, she may confuse unpredictability with passion. Not because she wants drama, but because that's the only rhythm her nervous system learned to dance to. Seneca once said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Childhood is where that begins, where the mind, still soft, learns to prepare for storms that may never come, but leave us tense forever. Now, this isn't about blame. It's about clarity. Because once you start to see the way someone talks about their family, especially their parents, you start to hear the story behind the silence. We weren't that close doesn't mean nothing happened. It often means something did and never healed. My dad was around, I guess, can speak volumes more than a dramatic monologue. That, I guess, is often holding a world of swallowed disappointments. And this matters deeply, because you're not just building something new with her. You're stepping into a house built on the foundation someone else laid. And if that foundation is cracked, you need to know if she's repairing it or just decorating over the damage. When a woman speaks of her family with peace, even when the past was hard, that's a sign of emotional integration. It means she's looked back without getting stuck. But when every mention comes with avoidance, sarcasm, or numbness, you're witnessing a heart still trying to outrun ghosts it hasn't named yet. You don't need to diagnose her. You don't need to fix her. But you do need to see clearly, because love without clarity is not love. It's projection. And clarity, my friend, begins at the roots. Number 2, what her view of men. She may smile at you, flirt with ease, lean into affection like it's second nature. But there's a deeper test of her emotional truth, and it's not how she treats you when things are good. It's how she speaks about men when you're not the subject. Listen closely. What does she say when a male character cheats on a show? When her friend tells a story about being ghosted? When she talks about her ex? Not once, but in those small, drifting mentions she doesn't think you'll catch. That tone, whether sharp, bitter, dismissive, mocking, is more revealing than 1,000 declarations of "I've moved on." Because while her words may dress the wound, her beliefs still bleed through. Epictetus wrote, "It's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." The same is true here. If she has internalized the idea that men are unreliable, selfish, emotionally unavailable, it's not just a philosophy. It's likely a defense, a belief shaped by bruises, one that once kept her safe, one she might not even realize she's still carrying. And here's the catch. Those beliefs don't dissolve just because you're different. Even if you're kind, even if you show up, even if you're nothing like the ones who let her down, her subconscious may still whisper, "Men leave." And when you're quiet for a moment too long, she flinches. Not because you did something wrong, but because her past did. This isn't about blaming her. It's about understanding the terrain you're walking into. A woman who believes most men are incapable of loyalty will, eventually, test yours. A woman who has never seen emotional maturity from a man may not know how to recognize it when it stands before her. And a woman who's still angry at him, whoever he was, might end up handing that anger to you without meaning to. The truth is, we all carry stories of our past. But the way she speaks about men in general tells you whether she's still inside that story or if she's finally stepped outside of it. Does she speak with nuance, with balance? Does she hold space for the idea that there are good men, flawed but honest? Or does she roll her eyes when you mention emotional depth, mock the idea of commitment, or preemptively assume you'll hurt her? These signals aren't random. They are maps. And if you learn to read them, you won't just avoid heartbreak, you'll gain insight. You'll know whether you're building something or inheriting someone else's war. Because when she talks about men, she's really talking about memory. And you deserve to know if you're being seen for who you are, or as the shadow of someone she's still trying to forget. Number 3, how she handles conflicts. If you truly want to understand a woman's emotional history, don't just watch how she behaves when she's happy. Watch what happens when something breaks. It doesn't have to be big. A small disappointment, a shift in plans, a moment where she feels misunderstood. That's where her emotional reflexes, the ones wired by experience, not intention, begin to surface. Will she withdraw into silence? Will she accuse, deflect, lash out? Or will she stay present, breathe through the moment, and search for understanding? These aren't random reactions. They are rehearsals of old roles she's played, long before you ever showed up. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. But many people, conditioned by pain, never learn this power. Instead, they learn that conflict means danger, that being wrong means being unloved, that vulnerability invites punishment, and they carry these lessons into every new bond. If she shuts down in the face of tension, she may be reliving moments where speaking up led to rejection. If she explodes, maybe she grew up in a home where love had to be loud to be heard. If she turns cold and distant, perhaps she learned early that closeness comes at a cost, and distancing herself is the only way to feel safe. What you're witnessing isn't about you. Not at first. It's a reenactment. And the moment you become the target or the trigger, you must ask, is this a wound surfacing or a warning sign? Conflict is a mirror, not of what is wrong in the relationship, but of what is yet to heal in the individual. Some women enter conflict seeking clarity. Others enter it seeking confirmation of their deepest fears, that they're too much, not enough, or destined to be abandoned again. This is why you must observe, not just endure. A woman's conflict style is often the purest echo of her past, louder than any story she could tell. You'll learn more from how she argues than how she answers questions, more from what she assumes about your silence than what she says in your presence. And here's the truth. Love isn't proven in perfect peace. It's revealed in pressure. Not every reaction needs fixing, but every pattern deserves to be seen. Because if she's fighting ghosts, No amount of patience from you can free her. That's her battle. Your job is to see it for what it is and decide if you're ready to step into that fire with her. Not to be burned, but to witness whether she knows how to come out cleaner, stronger, and more real, or if she's just dragging yesterday's ashes into every tomorrow. Some people resolve conflict, others recycle it, and knowing which one she is may save your heart more than any sweet moment ever could. Number 4. What moves her and what doesn't. Sometimes, the most revealing truths aren't spoken. They're felt. In the flicker of her eyes during a movie scene, the quiet skip of a song on a playlist, the way she suddenly shuts down when someone raises their voice in the next room. Emotions don't lie. They leak. And they often leak in the places we've spent years trying to hold together. The question isn't just what makes her cry. It's also what doesn't. When something deeply human happens, pain, tenderness, reunion, and she reacts with numbness, that's not indifference. That's defense. A kind of emotional scar tissue built from feeling too much, too soon, with no one to help her carry it. A woman who skips songs about betrayal without a word might not just dislike the melody. She might be protecting herself from a memory. One who changes the subject when someone opens up may not be cold. She may simply be afraid of where the conversation might take her. On the other hand, when something simple, like being left out of a text thread, hits her harder than expected, that too is a clue. Not an overreaction. A trigger. Seneca once wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And for many people, feeling is the bravest act of all, especially when their feelings were once used against them. The truth is, many of us become experts at hiding what hurts. We laugh at what wounded us, intellectualize what confused us, and minimize what broke us. So when a woman seems oddly calm in the face of chaos, or startlingly sensitive to what seems small, pay attention. Those reactions aren't random. They're footprints. Emotional highlighters tracing the outline of something she hasn't fully named, or perhaps has buried to survive. This doesn't mean she's broken. It means she's layered. We're all shaped by what moves us, what silences us, and what makes us come alive. A woman whose voice softens when she talks about protecting someone, or whose face shifts when she hears a certain kind of honesty, that's emotional memory in motion. She might not even realize it, but you do. Because you're watching not just her, but her emotional history show itself. And in the long run, that history will shape how she loves. Some women are moved by depth, by truth, by stability, because they've had enough of chaos. Others can't connect to that yet, because their nervous system is still wired for drama and distance. So don't ask, what makes you emotional? Watch, listen, notice what stirs her and what leaves her silent. Because the parts of her that don't react might be frozen. The parts that react too much, still healing. And the parts that light up in stillness, those are the pieces of her that survive the storm. Number 5, how she carries her past relationships. You don't need to ask, when was your last relationship, to know when her heart was last broken. You don't need the date it ended to feel whether it still lingers in her life. Because the past doesn't always come out in clean answers. It comes out in phrases, hesitations, the way she remembers we more than I. In a quiet moment, she might say, "I used to go to that coffee shop every Sunday." There's a softness in her voice, a little drop in energy. That's not just nostalgia. That's memory wearing a disguise. People rarely talk about timelines directly, but they leak them constantly. "That was about 2 years ago," she says without thinking. Or maybe, more tellingly, she doesn't say anything at all, just moves past entire chapters of her life like they never existed. That silence, it speaks volumes. Epictetus taught, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." But many people, before they can move forward, must first pretend nothing happened. And so, they skip over their own stories. Or they tell them so cleanly that the mess is invisible. But healing isn't linear. And stories that feel too polished often hide chapters that still ache. Watch how she talks about transition. After everything fell apart, she might say, or, "I had to rebuild myself." That's more than breakup language. That's recovery language. It hints at how deep the fall was, and how hard she had to work to stand again. You're not trying to catch her. You're trying to understand her. Because knowing whether she's still anchored to someone else, or still sorting through emotional rubble, matters. Not to judge, but to know what you're stepping into. Some women have truly closed the book. Others are still rereading the same page, hoping the ending changes this time. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the difference, not in her answers, but in how she tells the story, in how much space that chapter still occupies inside her. You may hear a name that comes up too easily, or never comes up at all. You may notice she avoids moments of stillness, fills silence with noise, because silence is where memories speak the loudest. A woman's timeline of love is rarely written in words. It's written in patterns. Does she rush intimacy, or fear it? Does she cling, or keep a distance that never fully closes? These are clues, not to her future, but to where she's been. You're not just dating her today. You're meeting the echoes of everyone she loved, trusted, lost, or survived. And understanding her timeline helps you know, are you building something together, or walking into a story that's still being rewritten? Because when someone says, "I'm ready," the truth isn't always in their voice. It's in the silence that follows. Number 6. What her relationship with attention says about her self-worth. Watch her when she enters a room. Not just how she looks, but how she carries herself in the light of other people's eyes. Some women seem to absorb attention like oxygen. Others deflect it like it burns. But either way, how a woman responds to attention, especially from men, tells a quiet story about what she needed, what she lacked, and what she may still be searching for. It's easy to assume it's just confidence. But sometimes, that glow isn't just self-assurance, it's hunger. Hunger to be seen, validated, reassured. Because when someone grows up feeling invisible, whether from a distant father, an emotionally absent ex, or years of being overlooked, they often learn to equate worth with eyes watching them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself." But for someone who never felt enough on their own, the idea of within is foreign. Instead, they chase the mirror of admiration, likes, stares, compliments, DMs. Not because they're vain, but because attention feels like evidence that they exist, that they matter. And here's the critical difference. There's nothing wrong with enjoying attention. It's natural. But needing it like a fix, like a drug, is a sign of deeper disconnection. The kind that no partner, no relationship, no constant praise can ever truly satisfy. So pay attention to the why behind her presence. Does she seek connection or confirmation? Does she talk about men hitting on her because it's funny or because it affirms her? Does she light up only when admired, or even more when she's understood? These distinctions matter, because one woman enjoys the light and can walk away from it. Another needs it to feel whole, and when your attention fades, even for a moment, she'll start scanning for someone else's. Not out of betrayal, but survival. You'll notice it in subtle ways. How often she mentions being desired, how much her identity is tied to being noticed, how anxious she gets when the spotlight shifts. And no, this doesn't mean she's shallow. It means somewhere in her past, visibility became the currency of love. What you must decide is whether you're stepping into a partnership or becoming her new mirror. Because if you ever stop reflecting what she needs to see, she might forget who she is. In a world that teaches women to perform for praise, the most grounded ones shine differently. Their glow doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing themselves. And those are the women who don't just attract attention. They transcend it. Number 7. How she talks about other women. There's a hidden mirror in every conversation. And sometimes, the clearest way to see a woman's relationship with herself is by listening to how she speaks about other women. It's easy to miss. A quick comment about a friend's outfit, a passive dig at a coworker's success, a rolling eye when another woman walks by. These may seem like throwaway moments, but they're actually windows into her inner world, her self-comparison, her old wounds. Because the truth is, how a woman views other women is often a direct echo of her own insecurities, her past betrayals, her inner peace, or her lack of it. If every woman she mentions is doing too much, probably faking it, or just after attention, ask yourself, is that really about them? Or is it a projection of how she sees herself? Someone who once felt left out, overlooked, or betrayed by a female friend may carry quiet resentment into every new encounter with women. Not because she's bitter, but because she hasn't yet separated them from her. Epictetus reminded us, people are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them. And in no area is this more personal than peer relationships. When a woman is at peace with herself, she is rarely at war with others. She may still notice flaws. She may still have preferences, but she won't need to tear others down to feel taller. On the other hand, if she constantly speaks of other women with sarcasm, distrust, or superiority, that's not independence, it's armor. It's a shield built from past rivalries or betrayals, worn to avoid vulnerability. And the danger isn't just how she views other women. It's what that reveals about how she will eventually view you. Because if her default mode is competition, not connection, if her instinct is to mistrust, not understand, that pattern won't stop with strangers. It will come home, into your conversations, into your moments of struggle, into the way she sees you succeed or fail. Notice how she speaks of her closest female friends. Does she celebrate their wins or quietly diminish them? Does she hold space for other women's complexity or flatten them into one-dimensional labels? These aren't just opinions. They're reflections of how she holds herself. A woman who has done the work, who has met her jealousy, sat with her wounds, and transformed her competition into compassion will sound different. Softer, wiser, still human, but no longer reactive. And that difference? It's everything. Because in a world that trains women to compare, the ones who choose to connect stand out. They're rare, but they exist. And when you meet one, you'll know. Final reflection. You've made it to the end, not just of a video, but of a quiet journey most men never take. And that alone says something about who you are. You're not chasing shortcuts. You're not looking for surface tricks. You're seeking something deeper, clarity, discernment, peace. Because in a world that tells us to ask more, dig harder, press for answers, we often forget that the truth is usually already there. It's not hidden in dramatic confessions or emotional interviews. It's in the pauses, the shifts in tone, the way someone shows up, and how they disappear when things get real. The women you meet won't always know what they're carrying. Many were never taught to unpack their past. They were taught to keep moving, smile through the damage, adapt to survive. But if you've watched closely, if you've learned to observe rather than interrogate, you've seen it. The fingerprints of old stories still pressed into today's actions. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But so much of what we call reality in relationships is built on that very imagination. Our projections, our hopes, our idealized versions of who someone might be if they finally felt safe or healed or whole. And sometimes they do get there, but sometimes they don't. Your job is not to fix. It's not to rescue. Your power lies in seeing clearly and choosing wisely. Because when you can look at someone with eyes wide open, when you understand not just what they say, but what they show, you take back control. You stop confusing potential with presence. You stop falling in love with stories that haven't yet been written. And most importantly, you stop losing yourself in the process of trying to understand someone who hasn't yet understood themselves. So now, I invite you to do something simple. Reflect. Was there a moment in this video that struck a nerve? A memory it pulled up? A woman you suddenly saw more clearly in hindsight? If there was, share it in the comments. Not for me, for someone else who might read it and realize they're not alone either. And if this kind of insight speaks to you, if you're building your life with intention, strength, and stillness, subscribe to Stoic now. Because this isn't just content. It's practice. It's training for the quiet kind of power that never needs to raise its voice. You've already begun that work just by watching with this kind of attention. So protect your clarity. Keep your standards high. Trust the patterns more than the promises. Because the world is full of people telling stories, but very few are brave enough to live in truth. And when you learn to see the difference, you'll never waste yourself on the wrong person again.